All right, and we're on air. All right, folks, hello and welcome to the Search Geek Speak, the much anticipated show on site audits and technical site audits. Because as much as it seems to be a common part of our business, it also seems like something that something people don't get or people aren't sure what to do. Well, I guess it's like that secret sauce. Well, I guess before we even start, isn't it like I thought of one thing as I was putting notes together that I think we all do audits differently. Like I think people are always looking for that big red button as always, and that we'll get a bunch of guys like Bill and Terry and Doc together and Kevin, and we're gonna all just echo each other and say the same thing. But I don't think that's gonna happen. I think we're all gonna come out over the next hour, hour and a half with things that we do differently, and I think that's important for SEOs to understand that you find you can pick up things along the way, but I think we all kind of audit differently. So anyways, all right, let's get started. We have Mr. Bill Slawski, Go Fish Digital, SEO by the Sea. Anybody wants to find him, all the information is sitting down on the event page on Google Plus, so go find him. Kevin Doory, Doory. I go with Doory. Is it Doory? No, Doory. Fuck me. Yeah, see, I don't know. Yeah, this is how we learn. Yeah, I didn't even know what your company was called until today. Funny enough, I've known you for so long. I was like, okay, I gotta go find everyone. And so you are dealer on. Anyways, Kevin is a specialist in the automotive market, but again, SEO for a long time, so he can do all kinds of shit. Doc Sheldon, intrinsic value SEO. I believe I got that right. I'm hoping I got that memorized by now. And obviously Search News Central. And I was over at Search News Central this morning, Doc, and I went, oh my God, I got to start writing some shit. We got to get that thing alive. So anybody who's got any writing talents, hit up Doc. And of course, Terry, the doobie, what was it, Doc? What did you come up with? A toque, not a toque. It's a toque. Right. And of course, SEO pros, international website builders, and my partner forever in the dojo. So, all right. So, first thing I want to get out of the way, just before we start going on anything, is, folks, this is not going to be about forensic audits and shit like that, because that could take forever. That's a topic on its own. Maybe if everyone cares about forensic audits, meaning when a site's lost traffic and you're trying to identify problems, that's a totally different animal. So we're just going to start here, and we're just going to go with just standard everyday audits. So, all right, Bill. Well, Doc, fuck anybody. I think one of the things we talked about in the green room, I think to preface any of this, is that it's almost that approach to an audit. Like that is it, why am I doing this? What did the customer want? Is this a full-on in-depth audit, or is this a 40,000-foot audit? Like, you know what I mean? So, like, Bill, I know you were talking about the after-sales calls, but do you get involved in the pre-sales calls to try and identify what they're after?
I sometimes get asked to look at a site and come up with some points that we might raise during the sales call. If there are any SEO issues with the site that it would make sense to bring up. So there is some pre-auditing going on of client sites. And there are a number of things I look at, and I'll write out a list of about 5 or 10 things that might help our company sell a client on a site audit.
And it does, Doc, I guess you obviously you own your business, so you're involved in every sales call. I mean, that even pre-audit is what kind of questions are you asking? What are you looking for? Like before you even get into the audit, how do you approach these things?
Well, I approach that beginning contact the same way I do even if I'm looking for an SEO client as opposed to an audit client, because I'm trying to understand the business, understand their market, understand their competitors, their problems, what are their pain points, because a lot of times that'll help me understand when I'm doing the audit why they might have done something a particular way. And it may be a method may be misguided in some instances, but not necessarily so in other instances. So I need to understand the business.
Right, and
that's usually the biggest focus.
I like that. Bill and I were kind of talking about that while you were having a smoke. But I think another thing is why are they coming to you? Did they read some article somewhere that said I need an audit, or are they coming to you because they actually understand the concept? Like there's that pre-qualifying element, I think, to audits before you even start. You know,
That's a question I get a lot. They read a blog post someplace that said that every site should have an audit, and that's not necessarily true.
We often have kickoff meetings before we start doing an audit where we can talk to the client, make them show that we actually care about them and want to help them, and see if they have any specific issues or problems we want to address. Like at one automotive client who had a knowledge graph showing, and it didn't highlight their automotive sales showroom. It showed off their repair service.
Yeah, but you're killing me now. I'm still pre-sales here.
Right.
Kevin, I don't know how you do you get involved in the pre-sale element, or are you just picking up an audit after the fact?
Well, from a personal side, it's often a referral, but business-wise, like we're involved in the sales side. Like we are brought in. Now, what we do, we don't do a full-on audit in my business, my day job.
So you do it like I was talking before to show that 40,000 foot view one.
Yeah, we do like a micro audit, like a mini audit where we touch on the key points, and because you can turn around and say to somebody, these are the tip of the iceberg. There are 5 icebergs that we need to go down, and this is what. Now we're doing it from a sales standpoint, but also before I would much rather have a conversation with a potential client about, without it being forensic, what's the point of the audit? What are you hoping to gain from the end of this audit? And that's where we know whether or not we're going to step forward.
So that's part of the sales process, and that was something Bill and I were talking about. So we're going to move from there to this kickoff thing that Bill does, because I think to a degree you're establishing trust. I mean, because I'll do that a lot. Like I have a full-on audit, and I have an audit that's like the 60,000, 40,000 foot view or whatever, and I think that I actually push them to the cheaper one, because we're just going to go and look for problems, and what we find, we can dig in deeper and set up a secondary contract or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think in a lot of cases, it's not worth doing that full audit. Now, if I get like maybe a larger corporate entity that has a head of SEO or somebody I know and trust, and he's like, dude, believe me, we need the full on, then fine, I'll go that way,
Yep, that's a lot. Like a lot of the times, what I will do on the personal side is I will handle the audit, whereas I have a person that I can recommend the implementation. So that's a lot of the times that's our kickoff call. Like, just so you know, you don't have to hire this person, but it's sort of like having a general contractor and then a specialist if you need something fixed with your house. So that's how I like to approach the calls, because then I know what we're getting into.
I have excluded Terry from this part of the conversation because I know you're just a bull in a china shop, and you always just hammer to what they need. So I don't think you have to worry about the sales process.
I'd like to know.
I worked with you, man, and you're always the same way. I'm trying to be nice, kiss a client's ass, and you're like, fuck it, Dave. What does he need? So,
I believe in the straightforward approach. Gives me, if you're doing an audit, kind of know what you're looking for. To just come in and say, find what's wrong. You don't want me doing that, because I'll find everything. And you might not.
Like Bill and I were talking before the show about pain points and the desire and the need and what are they looking for. Everything right down to profit margins and stuff that you like to talk about. You need that in that sales process. Identify what matters to them and take it from there. All right, so we're going to move past the sales point now. So now we've sold the job. So we'll start with you, I think, Bill, because you and I really had a fun conversation. Everyone did before the show. And folks, that's why you want to be part of these panels. The really good stuff we don't give you. Come on. You got to pay for that. Anyway, so Bill, the kickoff meeting. Explain to everyone, not in the panel, but to everyone watching and listening, like the concept of your kickoff meetings, and everyone can offer in their own, because I got my own input as far as what I do with the kickoff, but you might as well explain the concept and let everyone know how you approach it.
So the point behind the kickoff meeting is to exchange information, like sharing sharing Google Analytics and Google Search Console information, making sure that gets passed along, asking specific questions about what types of things interest them. If they have any issues with their site that they want you to look into, because in addition to going through the site, you will answer their questions, and they likely came to you with more than just I've heard of audits. I want one for my site. They're likely have some problems that they can point to and say, we don't understand why this is happening. Can you tell us? Can you look into that? And, make them understand that you're concerned about what's going on with their website. You want to help them.
And that's it. I'm such a believer. I think that's part sales process, part post sales with the kickoff. I agree with all that. And that if you're not showing an interest in their business model, in their business, in their website, and everything else by digging into those finite points, then you're losing a sense of trust and getting that final payment. Well, speaking of which, I was charged for audits up front, people, because literally I've had people that after you tell them the answers, they didn't like the answers, like you have to change your CMS, and they won't pay you. So always charge up front. But yeah, it builds that trust and everything else. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, Doc, you were kind of in this with me and Bill before the show. What are some of your initial kickoff meeting things that you like to get into?
Well, like I was saying a minute ago, I like to understand the business, because there's things that will come into play when I'm making my recommendations. What are some products they've recently discontinued, but maybe they still appear on the site? What are some products that they're planning on introducing in the next 3 or 4 months that should be considered in the site architecture? What's their greatest mover? In terms of volume, what's their greatest mover in terms of margins? When you understand those sorts of things, you can give a much better recommendation. I take advantage of the opportunity to figure out who the players are. How technical is this guy I'm talking to? Is he the guy that's going to make the final decision? Is he the guy that's going to be responsible for implementation?
And that approaches a couple of things we talked about before the show as well. That how many department heads or what people of value are in that kickoff meeting? You know what I mean? Like, or even the post production, meaning after you deliver the audit. But still, like, who's in that meeting that has ability to make change? You know what I mean, Bill? Do you have like your development guy in there as well as your SEO guy and your social guy? Like, how broad do you get that kickoff meeting to get everyone on board?
Ideally, you want to have somebody designated as a point person. The person you go to, you have questions, or if they have questions, the person they send asking the questions. Because having one person who could act as an evangelist for your company inside their company and work with you, tell you about the other people and so on, is a good thing.
It could be a real nightmare if you're having to deal with 5 different people who don't even know for sure who's got the most pull.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need a primary contact. If you're dealing with more than 5 people, you need an account manager. I want to know who is my primary contact. He will funnel out the right questions. We can have as many follow-up kickoff calls as you want, but once we get all the ducks in a row, let's have
an point of reference. Somebody else is going to push it through, but at least in that kickoff, have everyone committed or on board with what we're doing here.
You should have a project manager on your side, somebody who takes notes, who sends out emails to everybody involved after the fact. Yep. That maybe they've taken notes on assigned tasks.
And I think you got to understand sometimes that you are pissing in the wind. You know what I mean? Terry, that UK company, very major one, most people in the UK would know. But like we did an audit for him, and then because one of the head of SEO was like someone we knew, and then he left, and about 2 years later, and he said, the new guy coming in was also someone we knew from the dojo. And he's like, well, go talk to these guys and get an audit. And literally didn't look at the first audit, did it clean up, straight up, and pretty much the same advice still existed 2 years later, because implementation isn't always going to happen. You know, it's that old adage, Terry, of 90% of the blame, 10% implementation. You know, so sometimes you are just pissing in the wind, and I think like we're saying here, guys, that as much buy-in as you can get from the corporate level on larger projects, or even SMBs. If you talk to are you talking to the SEO guy brought you in, or are you talking to the guy who owns that medium-sized business? Like, what kind of buy-in are you getting for that? You know, and I think that's getting it implemented is often some of the toughest stuff. You know? All right, so next thing I want to go into
implemented correctly is the toughest.
Yeah, well, then they got to pay you for follow-up, and a lot of people won't do that, so it comes with the territory. So I think we're almost kind of strolling into that territory anyways. So I wanted to get into kind of like data-driven audits as opposed to intrinsic or business-driven audits. So again, we're taking from our kickoff meeting and our sales process now, and we're kind of moving into the next actual implementation phase. And we all know it, like everybody here knows this, that if we're in a Facebook group of any kind, it's always like, what's the best tool? What's the best this and that and da-da-da. Whereas if you haven't established those questions in part 1 and 2 of this, you don't know what data you're looking for, so you're just hitting big red buttons and hoping for the best. Like anyone can speak to it, but where do you put the value of tools on this whole audit process?
Depends on what I'm using them for, what purpose they have. The tools that are gonna tell me and give me warnings and actually tell me how to do the audit, no good. The main tool I use is Screaming Frog, because it pretty well tells me gives me 90% of any data I need, including site speeds, ranking of pages. You can get all that in one place. And it's pretty easy to look across one line and pick out the problem areas. That's real easy. And the fact that they have a drop-down menu that pretty well shows you any problems that you should be looking for on that particular element or whatever, invaluable. Like from there, it's using what's between my ears. So I start every audit by...
All right. So, again, I agree. It's the brain between my head to understand the data, but also the brain in my head to ask the right questions. Again, going back to our sales process, going back to our kickoff, there isn't a blueprint for audits. I don't know. Like, I know Bill and I have talked ad nauseum about audits and stuff. Like, and so have Doc and I. Kevin, how do you go about stuff? Like, I know you like to break these down into your business and your personal stuff. Let's go with your personal side work.
Yep.
Let's say your personal side work, you got a medium-sized business, something like that. Let's put that scenario there.
Right. Like, I look at it the same way that Terry would say, like, the tools that tell me what's wrong have no place for me. Like, I want the data gathering tools. Like, I look at it like, if I was a doctor, I need the x-rays. Give me the tests that sometimes I'll do. Sometimes I need a CAT scan, so I'll go above Screaming Frog to like a deep crawl or some of the other ones, depending on the size. And that's physical limitations if I don't have the ability to crawl.
But even when you do that, something like deep crawl, which I obviously been using for some of these larger stuff I've been doing, can overwhelm you with information. And I think this is where a lot of, even Screaming Frog for the people that have been like newer in the business or whatever, like I think there's an element of, I think why the people are interested in this topic is because sometimes it gets overwhelming. You plug it into Moz, or you plug it into Raven, or you plug it into Screaming Frog, and you get all this crap back. So what am I supposed to look at? What am I supposed to do with this? Where am I supposed to go? Just spit it back to my client? Like, what do I do?
But you take the data down, and what I prefer to do is give me all of the data I can possibly get in the beginning, put it usually into an Excel file or an Excel spreadsheet or a database, and then start manipulating that data to see what is causing certain things. Like, I would much rather, if I showed you the beginning of my, or if I showed you any of my audit files, that first Excel sheet has 37 million columns and all, like it's everything that is, then I take the data from other tools and put them all together. And then I try to filter that out to what I'm looking for. So I throw out the
like
stuff.
I'm pretty sure from what I know about you and stuff, like you've got a lot of long-term clients like I do, right? So you're almost, if you do an audit once a year, you're almost auditing your own work from last year. You know what I mean? So it's that continuous improvement process. So what do you do when you get down to that nitty gritty? Because I do that to myself. Like I've got clients I've been with 2 years. So I'll do a, once a year, I'll do a little sort of audit on the site and pretend I don't know the guy from last year and find ways to improve on myself. So where do you start digging into that kind of stuff?
Well, then sometimes that's when I'll go to Screaming Frog and I'll start editing myself on what I'm crawling. So if I know I fixed something, if I know it's not an issue, then I'll use regex to jump in and be like, oh, well, only give me these areas that maybe from an implementation side, they've been lacking. Or we talked about in the green room, like what's a priority? Maybe we go to priority 4, which hasn't been touched. How much more of that do I have to look at? So there are like DEFCON levels, or then I don't have to crawl the whole site, and then I can compare the data I had originally in that gigantic spreadsheet to the other data that I've gotten, and I know the answer before having to go someplace like a SERP or another tool to tell me what I should already be able to figure out is wrong.
Like
Right.
Bill, I get the sense that you don't use the normal tools that a lot of people do. Like, because you and I have talked about this kind of stuff many a time, and so again, I want to like give people hints as things to play with, but what kind of tools are you using? I don't see you as the average like deep crawl Screaming Frog kind of user. I know you kind of dig into like more content related semantic kind of shit. Like what are tools? Like I'm sure do you play around in Freebase? Like what kind of tools fall into your audit world?
I use some other tools like the Knowledge Graph search API from Google.
Which, of course, you're going to put a link to in the event page, right? Anyways.
I can do that.
Yeah, anyways, keep going.
I've been adding RAM to my computer so that Screaming Frog will work with bigger sites, and I'm thinking about getting
Yeah, that's the same thing I was doing because I was working on that 20 million page site, bro. And I was like, okay, the amount of processing power I need to do that with Screaming Frog was crazy. I was like, okay.
People do it. Screaming Frog makes sense up until the point where you try to export it into Excel, and
which Excel just chokes on.
Right. So having the ability to do that with Excel makes sense. I like making content inventories with Excel.
Okay, and explain that.
So I take the information, like Kevin was saying, from Screaming Frog, and I manipulate it so that I can answer all the questions I have about a site. I have a sheet that's matching canonicals, where I take all the URLs and I take all the canonical links, and I see if they're duplicates. And if
now I already know this, but what is your goal with that process?
It's so that I know which how canonicals are being treated on the site.
Right. So if you got over indexation or crawl issues, things of that nature, you can flatten it out. No, that would be my thinking.
So if there are pagination pages where they're using the first page of a series as a canonical for all the pages of a series, I want to find that out because that shouldn't be happening. But it does. It happens sometimes.
What other kind of funky tools are in Bill's toolbox? For the record, folks, man, him and I talk a lot of audits, and again, everyone's got an approach. Now, I think at the end of the day, as long as you benefit your clients, I think it's all good. I don't think there is a cookie cutter SEO audit approach, but as long as your heart's in the right place, as long as you've understood the first two parts we talked about earlier, from the sales to the kickoff, and you're trying to do what's best for your client, I think any approach is good. As long as your motivation's in the right place. That's my Terry Van Horn speech, by the way, folks.
Yeah.
Using Google is really important. You've got to actually explore your SERP
out.
You have to understand the SERPs that you're seeing for different queries. What type of site links you're getting, what type of knowledge panels you're getting, Is a top result on a query that you've optimized the site for a navigational result from another site, so that it doesn't matter where you're ranked. If you're number 2 or number 10, if number 1's the thing everybody's clicking on,
Yeah. Dude, I am so pathetic. I have like query classification analysis in my stupid audits, like the big ones. Yeah.
I have, since we've worked, Dave, and you introduced me to SEMrush, I've been using that as part of the SERP out stuff.
Well, good. And again, it's a wonderful 40,000 foot view tool, right?
Yeah.
But don't think that that's it. Like, I think that's what SEOs fall into. Like you and I like that tool too. I mean, and I know the people over there and whatever, but for transparency or whatever the fuck we're supposed to do these days. But yeah, it's good to identify things, and I don't care what tool you use, but if you can identify stuff, hey.
Well, part of my audits are identifying opportunities, and one thing I discussed a lot with Bill recently is opportunities for rich snippets and that sort of thing. That's going to become more and more important, because more and more the top of the SERP is filled with rich snippet material. So those are right now some of the main opportunities that I'm looking for. And SEMrush is really good for that, because I put in 4 or 5 of the top competitors as well, which shows me who's getting the snippets, that sort of thing. That's you.
Now, there's an interesting concept I'd like to broach with everyone else. I don't actually do competitor analysis at least, that kind of stuff as part of my audits. That's a separate service I offer, that once I get past the audit elements, that I go and do that before I go to establish an ongoing monthly strategy. But that's just me. Does anyone else do competitor analysis stuff as part of their audits?
I do.
Really,
I keep my, well, and it, I don't want to use the term depends, and Bill, I didn't mean to cut you off if you're about to.
No, go nuts.
But,
I don't think it matters.
Is the, I do it to get context of what the SERPs are telling me. So I need to Bill's point, when you're doing query research.
To me, competitiveness, it becomes part of strategy. And to me, strategy is outside my audit boundaries, but that's just me.
Right. I don't like, I'm not going to give you in my audit, you're not going to have, if you paid me to do competitive research, that's a different entity. I can do that. You're going to get a high level view of, by the way, as I've come to my conclusions, these are your competitors in this space. This is how I'm basing my judgment. So I think you have to, the clients that I work with don't work in a vacuum. So I need to bring context to, I need to touch on it a bit. And then that would be an opportunity where you might say, if you wanted to flesh this out more, then we could do a competitive audit. We could dive further into this, but it's, to me, key to understand context.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Kevin. And when I say I get competitors, Dave, you know how I've done that for a long time.
No, yeah. Again, it's only just the way my brain works. I do the competitor analysis as a separate offering,
right,
service, report, because to me that starts to broach upon the ultimate strategy that I want to take. To me, my audits are just like an opening the door, looking for on-site. I try to isolate myself to on-site, other than maybe some link profile stuff. I try to isolate myself on-site. Let's get our house in order, then let's look at the rest of the world. And that's just a strategic thing. That's just how I do it. And again, that's why it's beautiful to have this group, because we all do things differently. But yeah, I don't even touch the competitor stuff until after I get past that process, and I offer that as a separate service. But that's just me.
Yeah. For me, I found that it exposes more data.
Well, of course it does. But again, I need to know what the ship, I need to know how the ship is before I need to worry about what ships are attacking us. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I need to know that. I want to get ship shapes.
But in the end, for me, an audit should tell the client that what they should be doing in the future. In other words, here's the overview of where you're at.
I'm just very on-site with my audits. I'm not as much auditing their SEO presence as I am the site itself. That's just my approach. Again, when I send a proposal, it outlines all the same things as you guys. I just package it differently. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like Terry and Kevin, I at least look superficially at the competition simply because it will point out opportunities. It will show potential problems. It can help the audit be more productive, more meaningful for the client.
I have a visibility
But I don't
section
go
in my
deep
audit,
into it.
but it's, you know, I'm more
And I
looking
don't
at
do
query
deep
spaces.
competitive analysis.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
I
I'm
hire
more
somebody
looking
like
at,
Kevin when I want that. You know?
you know, man, I've got sections in an audit for visibility, and that includes stuff like, you know, query spaces, somewhat competitiveness. I'll look at query classifications and stuff. Are we hitting the targets? You know what I mean, Bill? Like as far as classifications go, but I don't really look at the competitors that much. But that's again, but I also offer that up as a separate piece.
I don't look at the competitors too much either. Another tool, though, I do use are knowledge bases. So
That's a shocker.
If you are writing about a bank, okay, so a bank is a place you keep money. It's the side of a river. It's the way a boat or a plane turns. If you look in a knowledge base for the different meanings of bank, you'll see there's certain terms that indicate context. If you're not taking those context terms and including them on your page about that type of bank, you're missing an opportunity to give the search engine an actual meaning of which version of bank you're talking about. So using knowledge bases like that to help disambiguate and define.
Well, see, I'm just going to go with Deborah Norton, who just commented, if we're talking about technical SEO audits in quotes, they don't include competitor analysis. Ha ha! But, you know.
But that's like,
dude, I bundle them separately. We're all doing the same thing. I think the best thing we're highlighting here is what so many SEOs that are tuning in want to know. Is there is no red button. We all kind of have our own way of doing it. There's no one of us doing it a wrong way, as long as you've got your customer's best interest, your client's best interest at heart. I mean, and you have the knowledge to provide that advice and stuff. You know
and it's also why I can't do my audit the way Terry does his audit, or the way Bill does their audit. And if you sat there and said, teach me how to audit, I can teach you what I look for and how I get to there, but I can't, like, I've in my career pulled stuff from this person, from that person, from people in this room. Like, I've taken a tidbit there, and dude,
I have a Word doc open right now with my audit structure, and anytime you guys say something that I didn't have in it, I'm adding it. So, yep. That's why you do Hangouts. Come on, I'm stealing your fucking personal property, boys.
Right.
Your intellectual capital is mine now.
Dave, when I say I use competitive, that isn't in the audit. What I give the client, it's not there at all.
So you're just looking for pieces and puzzles and holes.
It's for filling in the blanks where I need them.
Right. And the only time I would put it in the audit, Terry, the only time I put it in is if it makes sense. If I was making a point in the audit, in my explanation.
So there you go. Let's go back to Kevin. Let's go back then. We're going to backstep to that sales process again. So just like Bill and I were talking about before the show, if one of the things they've identified that they're nervous about is how they're doing against competitors, then all of a sudden that audit might include that.
Right.
Right. No, I agree. I'm just saying, like, if for some reason it didn't, and you came down, it's mostly if it's ammunition. If I'm making a point, then I will mention that, like, just because, like I said in the beginning, the Excel file that has all of my data points, that's usually something that never goes to the client. I strip it out and give it to the client as they need it, but I can go back to it. So it's in my portfolio to be like, oh, well, while I was doing my research, I observed this, and that's where your competitors would pop in to the audit. That's what I meant.
The other thing that I think that, I just had a recent client that came to me. They wanted an audit because they didn't understand why their main competitor was dominating the number one slot while they were sometimes in 2 and 3, and they couldn't understand my God, I go to the SERPs. this is the only guy. Number one is the only guy that's actually got snippets. He's got site links. He's got snippets. So I go to his site and I look, and he's doing some schema markup where this client is not. I said, well, that's pretty obvious. They're putting in the work. They're taking the extra effort. They also had some dynamite content, really well written content, very contextual, and this guy was probably getting his from Fiverr. Okay, so you didn't need an audit. You needed to buy a brain. And when he saw the price tag, he agreed. He didn't need an audit.
Okay, I think we got one question. We got lots of questions, but I think we got one that kind of fits into the moment. Pedro Diaz over on YouTube was asking, does it help to have a preset roadmap of things you might want to look at? I'm going to say yes, because I do have a general structure, but it doesn't mean you adhere to it every time. Before delving into tools, he says he usually starts by looking at server structure, then content, and so on and so on. Again, Pedro, I think this comes back to what we kind of talked about with the sales and the kickoff meeting stuff. It all depends. I hate that in SEO. We use it too much lately, but again, it depends what the concern is to the client. So I don't know, guys. Like, does a roadmap help? And should this guy have a set things to start doing?
I have a starting point. Even when I'm going into that first meeting, I've already crawled with Screaming Frog and identified, a few things that, when they say this and this, I can say, oh, well, I found this in a quick review of your site. That usually helps with the sale.
Yep. As soon as you give me hey, I'm so-and-so, the nerd in me kicks off. I cannot not do anything. Like, I could not get it. We could have a conversation at a conference and you could give me your business card, and I probably looked at your site while I was waiting for the bus or something that's what I do. Like, I gotta have initial thought.
That is funny because, yeah, my wife being a web designer and stuff, that's pretty much us. Like, we could literally see something on TV or something, and we're both typing, got a laptop in front of us typing. Wow, she's like, oh, that shitty site is programmed with this, and I'm like, oh, the SEO is horrible. So yeah, it's kind of hard not to be yourself. Huh?
But also, I bet you that you and Tanya, I know I can tell kind of what I'm going to see at a website after I've done Screaming Frog with it, because I see the size of images.
But I know
should be.
But speaking to Pedro's question, I think I'm kind of like what I think Bill's going to answer, but I'm going to throw it over there. I'm more of a fucking artist. I really try my best to approach a site with an open mind and listen to what they want and see. I don't know. So to Pedro's question, Bill, do you have a set process, or is it an on-the-fly process depending on the situation?
There are certain places where I expect to run into problems, and I'll check those. I'll look at all the holes. I'll look at the canonical link elements, because I expect someone to sometimes be linking to a dev server that you need to be logged in to access, or because they're somehow otherwise very wrong.
Yeah, see, I'm horrible at that. I've gotten lazy because of Tanya. Like, that site is, I just say, go look at this site, and she'll come back with a bunch of shit. I guess I've gotten lazy. Yeah, I literally feel like an artist sometimes. I just kind of look at every site right from that homepage, and then while the Screaming Frog or whatever is running, I'm just kind of like bouncing around the site.
So I think I have both. Like
okay, which brings me to another one that nobody asked. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, do I have a set checklist? No, but I do the same things every time I look at a site. So I don't have to look at the checklist. Like, a long time ago, 10 years ago, I had to look at it and go, this is what I do.
But it becomes intrinsic. You can start clicking around a site.
But sometimes I go back, and if I can't find something,
you
I
start
go,
to
wait,
see stuff intrinsically.
did I miss that little thing that I never do anymore? Maybe I'll
So
go do that.
here's what I got totally out of the wild, because Kim Crossberg apparently wanted to be here today, but she couldn't, so I'll stand in. And I know this is a total debatable point, so we're not even going to go there, because that's a ranking factor fucking shit, and we'll do that another day. But how much of a usability element do you guys look at when you're staring at a site?
Okay, if you're talking a technical
No. I'm talking that, okay, whenever, I don't care if you want to argue search patterns with me and Bill all day and what we think about them, as far as implicit user feedback and crap like that, if it's a ranking factor, who gives a shit? I mean, literally the fact that if somebody enjoys your site, has a good time on your site, has good response, good checkout, good everything else, that they refer it to a friend and so on and so on and so on, which can be links and can be other things that are beneficial to SEO. So to me, undeniably, user experience is an SEO element, if not, well, it's obviously not directly to me at least, but indirectly it certainly is. So does anyone like look at usability factors when they're doing an audit?
I notice you're mentioning only usability without talking about accessibility. You know,
yeah, that's a different can of worms. Don't want to go there.
Well, it's different in that it's got some legal ramifications.
No, I don't.
You don't think it has a place in a technical audit? It certainly does for mine.
Well, it does if you're in California and shit like that, and places where it matters. But that's a little too deep down the funnel right now. We only got an hour and a half here, so.
Well, I look at you.
Let's just include that into usability and talk about it as a whole.
Okay, if I see glaring usability issues, obviously those are going to go to the top of my hit list. Okay, I don't normally focus heavily on itemizing usability issues, but if I, and yeah, sometimes you'll go to a site and you'll see things that just jump out at you and scream, "God, no! Why are you doing this?" But I don't go looking for the nitpicking stuff in terms of usability. No, not for a technical audit.
When it comes to things like anchor text, I'll look at the words used, make sure they're using keywords. I'll also look to see if they're the types of things that people will click on with some confidence, that they have some idea what's going to be on the other side of those links, because it is an important usability issue. And if people don't click on links because you've phrased them poorly, because they have no expectation that what they're supposed to find on the other side of that link is what they will find, that is important as part of a technical SEO audit to bring up as a usability issue.
Right.
Right.
I use it.
I think it's semantics with me, Bill. When I say, for me, a technical SEO is just the technical part. I call what you're talking about a content audit. And
Okay, but no, let me tell you. Okay, so Horia, which is one of our very active Facebook group members and stuff, he says, do you look at your mobile and audits, mobile focus, blah, blah, blah. So that does tie into usability. And again, depending on the business model, is it B2B? Is it B2C? What kind of, is it informational? Is it an e-com? That's too barefaced to really give a specific answer on. But, I think what we're just talking about, usability plays into mobile to a degree, because that's a part of usability and how usable is a mobile. But I think, to my mind, it also brings up, I hate to go to the ranking factors fucking game, but is there any prioritization everyone gives to which elements are more important? Like, maybe a title tag as opposed to an H1 tag, or mobile speed compared to desktop speed, or et cetera, et cetera. How do you guys because at the end of my audits, I give a short, medium, and long-term things that need to be done, right? And I base those on A, how easy they are to fix, and B, what kind of ROI value we're going to get from them, right? So how do you guys kind of think about the value of your advice in the audit process?
I start off audits with priority charts, which talk about how important a specific issue is, how difficult it is to implement, and what types of things it impacts, whether it's crawling or indexing or persuasion. And just having that priority chart, something people like to look at when they're deciding what gets implemented first.
Yeah, I break mine down, and that's in the recommendations. That's part of it for sure.
Same here. Like, mine is definitely there from because I want them to understand where their most bang for buck will be. Because if they had an unlimited spending, then you can do everything. But that's never the answer.
And they had a smoothed out process without red tape, but that never happens.
It's always, what should I fix right now? And that tells you this is what you should fix right now.
We're way too many questions right now, so I'm just trying to cherry pick here. This is stepping back a bit, but I think it's important. A guy named Jay on YouTube, I think.
Facebook.
Yeah, he was YouTube actually. He was asking, and I think this is important. When you're in the sales process, and I'm not sure if Bill runs in this, but I'm sure if you're doing side projects and stuff, I know the rest of us do. How much do you give away in that sales process as far as to impress them that you know what you're talking about without giving away the farm? Because I know so many guys over the years that would give so much information in their pre-sales stuff that the client didn't even need them anymore. They could just go hire some Indian to do it, or whatever, Like, how do you guys deal with that? Because I know how I do, but I think that's a great question, because sometimes you can actually bite yourself in the ass by trying to impress too much pre-sales. I know we're going back in time here, but
it starts with, are you selling audits or SEO?
Well, Terry, you used to call it the fishing trip, right? Right? You got people who come to you and they're just really fishing for information. They don't actually want to hire you.
Oh, well, they probably don't get an audit from me. Not one that's free. That's for sure. You get nothing from me until I get paid, period.
And like, if we're in the sales meeting, like,
so much work that I have to prove to you that you should hire me. I hire you, not the other way around. Sorry, that's just the way it is.
Like when we were saying that you start out with it, like Terry, you and I have already scanned the site. We've already crawled the site. We already know what's going on. Like if I'm in that sales meeting and this is on the personal side, like I probably know there's like 6 things wrong with your site before we have a conversation. I'm not going to tell you all 6 of those things. And to Terry's point, I shouldn't have to sell you on me. If I have to sell you on me,
dude, it happens. Like,
again,
you gotta remember, like on Facebook and the various groups, there's a lot of guys starting out and they don't have the portfolio, they don't have that history.
Right. But it's like
sometimes they talk themselves out of a job. You know what I mean? It happens.
But you said before, like an artist standpoint, like if you were talking to a chef or you talk, like I'll tell you how to make. I'll tell you the dish I made. I'll tell you one of the points. And like, the first thing I would do is I would go in there and fix your internal linking structure because you're having issues where this is bouncing to this and this and that. And that's what I would say. That's enough information.
See, I don't even do that. I wouldn't even go that far, bro.
I know, but it depends. It depends on the person. What I mean is I give you enough to tell you I know what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I can point to your specific issue on your site. That's such a fine line that
young guys get into because they're so desperate to build that history, to build that body of work, and to build that portfolio. A lot of young guys fall into that, or young people. Sorry, ladies, men, whatever.
I'm not young anymore, so
a lot of people fall into that, man. Like I hear that story a lot with younger folks. You know what I mean? I've been at this 20 years, and I got a reputation, so I can just tell you, hi, my name's Dave. Fuck you, send me a check. Like that's my world. But a lot of people don't have that.
But I remember even like 10 years ago, I remember being in an agency side in a client meeting and the client was busting my balls with 10 people in the room. And I said, basically, like, your goal is to get more money. You want to get more leads. So
now totally off the side, Kevin, aren't those the best meetings? I had one of those the other day where 4 people were talking at the same time in the echo of a fucking conference room. And I was like, anyways.
But my point was that, like, I can tell you enough information to let you know that I know about your site and I know my information. That's sort of where I was going with, like, what Terry was saying. Like, I think we're in agreement where, like, I'll give you a tidbit and then you'll understand that you want to get more information from me. Then I'll do the audit. We can do this stuff.
Kevin, you probably like me too. I'm confident enough in my abilities that I can give you the 40,000 foot, you need to look at your internal linking. Well, if they don't know what to look for, you've given them useless information.
Terry, half the time I say internal linking ratio. Half the times I say internal linking ratios, they don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about. They go, could you explain that, please? Like saying that doesn't even work half the time with me. Right. Bill, I got a question I think is probably good for your direction. Lada Kalashka. Well, never mind. Sorry, love you, Lada. You take into consideration the site's search user intent. Ooh, like that one. That is definitely a Bill thing. So yeah, not only actually, hold on. Let me expand on her question because I'm curious. Not only do you take into consideration user intent, but how do you establish what that is?
And should you in a site audit?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. Yeah.
It's not something I normally do in a site audit. It's usually a follow-up SEO task. But it's making sure you have informational pages and
So would that be something you'd like add on as part of the ongoing program that follows up the audit?
right, as part of a SEO campaign.
I would agree with that one.
You know, could I throw
go
something in, Dave? Follow up to the last question about giving away too much information. I think it's worth mentioning too, there are people out there that do site audits and then offer to implement the corrections. And there are people out there like myself that just do the consulting and say, here are the things you need to get done, as opposed to paying me to do them for you. These are what you need to get done. I don't give a damn who you pay to do it. This is what needs to happen. And I think that that's an important distinction, because sometimes, for instance, I will, in the audit report, I will give them very specific direction on how to fix things. You know, if it's a matter of implementing a particular piece of schema, for instance, I'll give them an example, not do all 40 pages for them. This is an example. This is how it should be, and this is why it's done that way. But but I'm doing it as a consultant. I'm not even. If they ask me, will you do it for me? It's 9 times out of 10, it's going to be no, because I don't have time for it.
I definitely, if I'm doing it for another SEO or a company that's going to give it to their SEO, I do 2 things. One, I make a recommendation, tell them how to implement it, and I'll also go and look at the work afterwards and tell them if it was done the way I said it should be done.
That's a good part of follow-up, yeah.
That seems to work for me.
We often use site audits as a way to start SEO campaigns with clients.
Right.
As a starting point. We provide recommendations. We tell them how to implement them. And then if they want us to implement them, we're the ones who do it. If they have questions about the work after they've implemented it, they'll ask us, and we'll sometimes answer those too, because it continues an ongoing relationship.
Right. Right. And also, you have to determine when you're doing it, do I want these people for a client, or do I just want to do the audit for them? There, you know, that's a balancing act, because there's some people I will do an audit for them, but no way I want to work with them on a long-term basis, period.
Yeah, well, got silent there, but I gotta agree with Terry. No, there are people that, you know, and again, you know, we got a whole bunch of old pros here and stuff, and you guys don't have as much of a trouble making a living, but in the various, you know, Facebook groups, including our own and stuff, there's a lot of younger folks that are trying to make a name and trying to get somewhere and got 1 or 2 clients, and there's always that pressure. I don't know if you guys remember that pressure, but there is that pressure having to, you know, pay your rent and feed your kids and whatever. And sometimes you're going to take on work that you might not necessarily enjoy the relationship you have. And I'm with you, Terry. Like, I still, to this day, there's some people, I'll do an audit for you, but I ain't working with you full time. It's like, nope, that ain't happening, man.
Life's too short.
Plus, a lot of the audits that I do are actually referrals to me from a colleague, another SEO.
Like
that
the
says, hey,
person though. Like,
I need an audit for this client.
I think I don't know what Terry's take on that is, but my take is simple. If I don't think I can affect change long term, I'm not going to take you on as a full-time SEO client, because I don't believe in my heart that my advice is going to go to anything useful and show anything good, productive from the relationship. Now, I can give you an audit, which you can hand to your programmers and your SEO team or who the fuck ever, but do I believe in my heart that this relationship's going to pan out? You're going to listen to me, or we have the kind of, you know, relationship that's going to make me effective long-term for you? A lot of times it's no, actually, Terry. I agree with you, man. I'd say almost 50 to 60% of my leads that I start with audits and other reports, I don't end up keeping as clients because of that reason. I mean, I could stuff one out the door for you, and I'll care about it, and I'll give you 100% of my heart and soul. But do I think you're going to listen to me for 6 months, a year, 2 years that it takes to make you successful? Probably not.
Right. Aren't we you talked about the sales process, the beginning, the kickoff. This is the after the audit conversation. Like,
right.
What happens after the audit? And for some of us, like, I've done consult, like when I was in an in shop, like this is what we did. We did the audit. We got the work, and then we worked with you. But now I'm looking to do the audit, and I don't have, my problem is, even if I want to, 9 times out of 10, I don't have the bandwidth right now to be your implementation guy. That's why it's finding the right people that you can build that trust. And I know that these people will work with this and this and that.
I think this is more so forensic audits than it is standard technical audits, but still at the same time, do you ever find you don't get enough information from the other side? That it's like, you got to dig in and pull teeth, and that you're not like getting it. I always try to tell clients in my sales meetings and kickoff meetings that I'm like a doctor. The more you tell me about the symptoms of the patient, the more I can help you. Like, and sometimes trying to get everything you need from, if it's profit margins or whatever it is to help you be successful for them, that you don't always get that. And that's a very tough thing to pull out.
Well, that's why Bill's point about the kickoff meeting, I think, is huge. That if you take that from there, I've had audits where people have paid me up front, like a significant sum of money, and we'd spent a lot of time and this and that. And you deliver it we'll talk about how we deliver the audits in a minute or down the line, but you deliver it. And I've had CEOs or whoever it is look across the table and go, "Oh, we knew about that. We didn't tell you about that because that's much more of a wormhole than we meant to do.
Yeah.
And thanks very much for confirming what we already knew." And it's like, well, okay, I feel used. I mean, you paid me, but it's just like, oh, well, you didn't tell me. You knew what was going on. You just wanted a second opinion.
Does that come down to qualifying clients, or at least understanding your own SEO business model as to how you approach a business relationship?
Well, no, I think it depends on what you want out of it. Like, I want to do the audit.
Okay, well, Jay McDonald on YouTube just said, "Do you guys always position yourselves as selling SEO, or is your pitch a larger picture of site effectiveness or lead generation?" I think, to me at least, I'll let you guys go, but I think there's the situational. Again, like sometimes you feel like this could be a long-term client, or sometimes it could be a one-off. Like, how do you position yourself in this process? Like,
it depends on what the client wants. Like, are they
well,
looking?
doesn't it depend sometimes what you want and how
busy
like
you
what
are,
you
maybe.
want? Like consider yourself like full-time self-employed, Kevin.
Right.
And so how busy are you? Like when I'm dry months, maybe I'll take a chance on this guy. But if I'm busy as shit, I'll be like, sorry, here, I'll refer you to someone.
Well, right. And in that when you're doing the initial sales thing, having done this for myself and having been I need this paycheck to go this way, when you decide I don't want to be in business with that client because the money that I will make will not make this beneficial. Like, you have to have the ability to say no. Like, I'll work for you, but I can't work with you. And because I can't do that. You have to pick and choose your battles.
Is that an audit level thing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I totally think you're right about that. You got to pick and choose your clients because it's the old Pareto principle of clients. If you're wasting 80% of your time dealing with a client's worth 20% of your revenue, you're having a bad day. But in audits, is that the case? I don't know.
Yeah, because sometimes you could open that wormhole. What happens if while you're doing the audit, you reach back and go, "Hey, do you guys know?" You have follow-up conversations like, "Do you know about this?" And they go, "Oh yeah, we tried to do that a little while ago." And then you learn more, and you're like, "Okay, never mind. Like, here's an audit that I should step away from," kind of thing. I'll be quiet now.
Well, the other aspect too is when I had a client that came back to me a couple of years after my first audit. They wanted me to do another audit because they had made a lot of changes to their site, and I found I think there was like 81 items in the report that needed to be fixed that were priority 1 and 2, and 79 of them had not been touched before they reworked the site or when they reworked it. So at that point, I flat told the guy, "You know what? I'm not going to waste the time and your money doing another audit for you to drop it in a drawer and forget about it. You didn't fix any of this crap. Why would I think you're going to fix it next time? Save your money." because that's frustrating as hell. And these guys were on page 3 and 4. They could have been on page 1 and dominated if they had just implemented some very basic fixes, like a 12-second page load on their homepage. You know, Jesus.
That's the starting point.
And they were still hitting, 12 to 15 second on the news site. It's like that's frustrating as heck. When you tell them what needs to be done and they just ignore it. If they do it wrong, okay, that's more understandable. But if they don't even bother to try, that's a client I don't want.
Yeah, well, sometimes you don't even know it's a client you don't want until it's too late.
Been there, done
It
that,
happens, man.
It does happen.
Yeah. All right, so we're past the hour, so I want to get into the one that we had the most fun with in the green room, which was the presentation, which was the deliverables, which was the follow-up meetings and all that kind of stuff. But I think that is, once you're done the meat and potatoes, that becomes the toughest part. So, all right, Bill, you want to start with that one? Like how you lay out and present your final product and how you organize post-audit event meetings and shit like that?
Sure. The presentation is just an important part of the delivery of the deliverable as a document is, because it's your chance to actually explain everything and answer questions. So I include, and we've talked about this quickly, briefly before we had this conversation about including things like executive summaries in the delivery document. And I use that as a place to begin conversations about deliverables with. Usually start off by giving the client a week or so to read the documentation and start off by asking if there are any questions that they have that they want answered before we begin talking about it. But then go to the executive summary, which indicates issues, where they're found in the documentation, and a very brief summary of what was found on there as a place to begin the discussion. And it is a discussion. You're talking about what the problem is, any education that needs to go on. And I think education is a really important part of the whole audit process, because it's how site owners learn about SEO and learn how useful it can be. But taking that, having the conversation about it, and giving them and continuing the relationship past the delivery of an audit can be important from that point, because you're teaching them that you can answer questions even if they have them raised, if they raise them later. They don't understand something, they want to talk about it, they can always email you and get back in touch. And it's good to have that understanding that can be done, because that's how they return business to you. That's why they refer other people to you. And having a client satisfied with an audit, referring other people to you, is a good way to keep your business in business.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really believe in a fancy presentation. I generally just put it in Word. And the other thing is, I deliver a number of different audits. I've done audits for as cheap as $200 a piece, but someone will give me 8 sites and say, give me a broad thing. Give me any glaring problems. Show me what errors are important in GSC, set up GSC, and then I monitor it afterwards. I do that really cheap because that's money down the road monitoring GSC, and I know that it definitely helps these guys out. So, and it's a service that they don't have time to do. And that's why they got me in the first place, because they realized they didn't have time to keep track of the day-to-day nonsense that happens on a website. Because they had a whole bunch. Like, I've been working with them for 6 months doing 8 or so.
I think it's a good point to add. Someone mentioned on Facebook, on the YouTube stream, is something we talked about in the green room, which is, guys, girls, whoever, when you're doing an audit, you got to account for, charge for that extra post-audit meeting time, which could be 2, 3, 4 meetings, 2, 3, 4 hours. And I think, Bill, that's when you brought up to make sure the right people are in the room and stuff. But
like one of the ways we were talking in the green room that I try to package my audits is when I'm doing them, I build them together as like one mass. So like I do them all the same way. Well, based on what the client wants. I don't want to throw the depends in there, but really if they just want an Excel sheet, I'll give it to them in Excel. But most of the time I do a Word doc that is either given to them in a Word doc or PowerPoint. That's semantics, which way you do it. But I give that to them ahead of time. And then I have gotten comfortable. It's probably agency life in the last 5 years.
No, but you got like something I always do, dude. I always say there's X number of hours of meetings. Anything past that will be charged at a rate of 100, 150 an hour, what the fuck ever. Because that could be the other problem is post audit, they'll start contacting you on Skype like twice a day and shit. Like, you know,
right, but it also depends on
you gotta be careful with that, or else you're gonna go broke in a hurry.
Right, but it's how your communication is. So I give them the audit, then I do the presentation, and like we were saying in the green room, the reason I like the Excel file, I can figure everything out for what they want. So if the dev team, if they follow it up and say my dev team needs this, then I have the full audit that you can have. Here's your instructions as to how to do that on these pieces. Here's your executive summary and your one-off for the dude on the conference call. Or here's your PowerPoint if you're the marketing director and you want to take this and present this to your team, fine. So I give them a bunch of different options, and that's all built into the overall cost.
I'm not sure we got into it there, Bill. Like Doc, whoever, I know Terry just fucking gets him on the fucking horn and says, "Here's what you got to do." So, you know, Terry.
Not all the time. I actually do reports now, Dave.
No.
Yeah, I do.
Oh my God. Well, that is just so weird.
But they're all standardized. Like I did one, and they're all standard now. But and I did a couple others where I gave a report, and how I did the report was basically I prioritized everything. Gave a recommendation for any problems I found and how to fix it. That seems to work pretty good.
I think this plays back to a bit of a common theme in that, am I fair in saying, guys, that as long as you're comfortable with your presentation, if it's a spreadsheet, if it's a Word doc, if it's like reports from analytics or whatever, as long as you're confident in your presentation format, that makes it easier for you to have those follow-up meetings, because I know we all kind of had different ways we send stuff over. So
yeah, I'm actually starting a new way now. Since Kevin mentioned the PowerPoint, I can hook Camtasia up to that. And when I'm talking about the content review,
there you go, video. Doc, you talked about video actually. What's the program you love to use there, Doc? Just so everyone knows.
Or
your video recording thing that you like to send over?
Oh, Zoom.
Zoom, yeah. So
Zoom.us.
You know, you like that sort of video recording version so they can refer back to it. Kevin likes his spreadsheets. I'm a PDF guy with spreadsheets as a backup. Bill, what do you do?
Usually Word docs and phone calls.
Word docs either editable. I just think someone's gonna fuck up my words.
Well, PDF
I export my Word docs into PDF.
Well, someone says I want a PDF. I just take the Word document and convert it into a PDF.
Yeah. PowerPoint could be a PDF like that. Like, okay.
I do, my format is somewhat similar. I always have an executive summary. Then I've got a findings. Okay, this is what we found to be major issues. I've got a recommendation section, and then I'll have a summary at the very end summarizing why I said what I said, and stressing again the really high.
You young folks, got to justify yourself. So I understand.
Yeah, young folks. Kid.
By the way, if I'm trying to get the contract, for every task that's in the recommendation, I'll put what I'm going to charge them to do that job.
Yeah, see, I deal with a lot of larger businesses, so I don't get to touch that shit a lot of the time. So I'm very short, medium, long-term goals, and those are based off of how important they are and how difficult they are to implement. You know what I mean? So, because I get that's I learned that from audits just because that's what I get asked. I mean, like I'm used to the post-audit questions, and so I kind of incorporate that into audits now, and I that's my implementation fucking approach. So
in my reports on both findings and recommendations, I'll assign like a 1 to 5 priority. This is the impact it may have. This is the priority you should attach to it in terms of getting it fixed. As part of that, because that needs to be. That's always a question if you don't do that.
Here's a new question. How careful are you with your advice on things to be done? Because if they don't have that development team to be able to implement it, or they don't have the people in place to implement it, you could be shooting them in the foot by giving that advice.
Well, for instance, if it's something that's going to require they make a change in their hit access, I'm going to tell them, that there's a danger there. This should be done only by people that know what they're doing, because when you implement a change in hit access, you could really cause a problem, break the site. But for routine stuff, things like setting up redirects, again, I'll tell them that these are the changes that should be done by a qualified specialist. Okay.
Well, right, because your advice could actually end up screwing them if they don't have the people to implement. Sure. I mean, and I think that's a consideration we haven't even mentioned.
That's usually already been addressed in our pre-audit meeting. I already know where they have those resources, and it will certainly be addressed again in our follow-up call as we're going through. And I'll stress it again. These are sensitive areas that shouldn't be done by somebody who's just trying to learn this.
There's another sensitive area. Because we said off the top we weren't dealing with forensic stuff, but you can create a forensic issue by implementing too many things at once, or cross-implementing things. Like that's another aspect that you got to be careful with too. Is that okay? Well, here's a bunch of advice. Just don't go do it all at once.
I think that goes back to
Go ahead.
Bill's statement that a lot of us agree with, where we put here's your issue, here's your impact, and here's your priority. And then I like to tie that all together with almost a roadmap of this is the recommendation of what you should do and when you should do it. I've never had an audit where I go, by the way, do everything that's in here right now.
But I think sometimes if you don't spell that out in black and white, it can happen.
But that's in the executive summary. Do this.
And do it. To throw it on a dev server, make all those changes, then throw it live, and you can get false positives. You can get things that a negative and a positive canceling each other. You can get so many fucking issues.
Yeah, but I think that moves more into the implementation of your audit.
Right, but explaining that you can't do it all at once is always important, I think.
Well, plus, anytime you do 2 or more things at the same time, if you break something, you've got to go undo it all and do it one at a time to figure out what the hell broke it. That's just dumb. You always want to isolate, because if the site suddenly disappears and won't serve, which one of the 16 things you changed last night do you think caused it?
Right, because then you have to pull that site in front of a bunch of guys like us and have a long, drawn-out conversation. Right, breaking the fourth wall there.
And somebody's ass will be handed to them.
Yeah, one thing.
Fourth wall. Oh my God, I didn't know Deadpool was with us today. All right, hey Deadpool. Look at you all being fancy.
One of the things I've done in the past when I was doing this kind of work with SEO pros is I would find out what they're actually capable of doing themselves. So if there was problems with HTML or site structure, something that they needed someone to do the work, well, what's the point in looking at that if they can't really implement it or do it? Like that's sometimes I look at stuff that way, especially when they want let's say a very cheap audit. In other words, they want to know quickly what's wrong. So you got to know what they can fix themselves. Oh no, none of you take that into consideration.
Oh yeah.
Well, sure.
Well,
You figure that out. Usually, it was the very first contact with them to some degree.
Yeah.
Then,
Again, it's not only what you have on hand to implement, but what is the motivation to implement. I mean, I've worked for corporations that literally, like I was saying earlier in the show, that they called me back 2 years later when someone else took over as the head of SEO, and I did a straight up audit, and then without even looking at the one I'd done 2 years earlier, went back and most of the shit was the same, meaning nothing got implemented. So it's like, they pretty much just spent like 5-10 grand and just threw it in the fucking garbage. It was like, okay, I'll take the money, but I'm not feeling good about this. I'm not affecting change. I'm not helping anything, So.
Yeah.
And that comes with the territory too with audits, like, what are you going to do?
When you see, when you're doing your audits, do you look at the links at all?
Yes, actually I do.
Only
one of the very few offsite things I do are links and link profile as far as velocity, anchor text, all that kind of shit. The risk for penalization. I do have preventative penalty stuff because I am a forensic guy. So I do actually look for thin content. I do look for potential link issues, stuff like that. I do actually do that because of obviously my history with forensic shit. So yeah,
I do it superficially, but only.
Yeah, I know I'm not digging in, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'll usually run it through Majestic and take a quick look, and that way I can tell them in the summary, you've got a potential issue here, but I offer link audits as a separate service, so I don't go into any great detail.
All right, so kind of back to the competitor stuff. Yeah, it's a cursory view, 40,000 feet, looking for issues, but nothing in depth. But yeah, I agree. I do that. Yeah, I do that, Terry.
Yeah, when I find that, I just say you might want to look at a link audit in the future.
Well, I'd hate to be an asshole, Terry, and do this audit up, and then by the time they're finished reading it, they get a penalty for something because I wasn't paying attention.
Why didn't you see that?
Yeah. I would hate to have that, bro. As a forensic guy, no, I would kill me. So yeah, I do actually look around for that kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure.
And quite often I'll include metrics from Majestic that I know indicate.
And again, like
quality
depending on the audit and the client, I'm looking at engagement metrics. I'm looking at conversion metrics. I do have some slightly what normal people would consider non-SEO stuff. I still think it's related because just like usability, it does have some SEO benefit if someone's linking to it, enjoyed the experience, etc., etc. So the same on the opposite. I do look for the forensic shit. Yeah, for sure.
I look at usability as part of content, and the content review entails looking for holes. So in other words, if I see in your keywords that you don't even have content to cover it, well, I might mention that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, me too. I include, like when you had mentioned usability, I was going to say actually the same thing. Like I include that as on page and content like that is in that section, and links are as part of your visibility. Like I usually include a comment about them.
Well, I think you almost have to because it's an SEO technical audit, but those are, maybe you could make the case that it's outside of that, but for me, it's just a bridge that needs to be crossed. So why not do it at this initial process? Because to me, an audit's always the initial process of a new client. So
right. One of the things that I look for is links and like contextual links. A lot of people don't really look at that as a big factor, but for me, it's major because I've seen where a site had no contextual links on the homepage. It was all just text and then links to the pages deeper. I added contextual links to the same ones in the navigation, and all of those rankings went up because The main reason is because most of the links to a site are to the home page. So any links that are in context there have that much more meaning. Just saying that, that's something that I find a lot of sites are very weak on. And it's something that I find, I look at it as a high priority.
Like to me, like one of the things walking in the door with this session was, the very specific kind of people we have, between you and Doc and Bill and Kevin. I think one of the greatest things I wanted to highlight is again, there's that red button, push a button, SEO mentality, cookie cutter shit. I really wanted to highlight that, regardless how respected any of us are, we all do things differently. I mean, we all have our own methods and ways and approaches. And again, if at the end of the day, if you're doing positive benefit for your client, then you've done your job. You know what I mean? I don't think you can, I think a lot of people came to this session want to know, here's XYZ on how to do an audit. And I don't think there is one, at least not me personally.
It's
well, yeah, a lot of people are looking for a template. And sorry, there is no template.
No, go ahead, Bill.
Site audit isn't a paint by numbers type endeavor.
Exactly.
Right, because if you had the template and if you took my audit and you put it on your site, it's not going to work. At a certain point, you're going to turn around and go, "Oh crap! How do I get to that number? Well, wait, how did you get to here?"
And again, we all have different, just like life itself. We all have different unique experiences and different clients and different query spaces and different approaches and tools and whatever. I mean, it's like we were in the green room and I asked you guys about that certain forensic job I was on, because I'm looking for input from different people who might see something or think of something that I didn't think of. So I guess that's another thing. Never be afraid to reach out to people in your network. You know what I mean? Never be afraid. Never think that you're the best at an audit, that you're the, greatest auditor ever. Don't be afraid. Like Doc, how many times you and I both gone back and forth on things in the last couple of years? It's like,
and generally one of us will always get some benefit out of it,
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why you build your network, so you can walk in and go, guys, or people.
That's it, man.
Like, I mean, that's the point of leveraging like friendships, and we talk about networking all the time. Do that because. Hey, Bill, I have this client that I've never seen this before. Have you seen this? Oh, maybe not, but so-and-so. So, yes. Sorry.
And even unique industries, query spaces, you know what I mean? Like you and I play in the automotive a lot. Some guy came along in the dojo group and said, I just got this new automotive client. You and I'd be like, all right, bro, come here. And of course, Ann would come in and help us as well and then talk about porn directors. And life in the 60s.
We were doing well there for a second.
Hi, Ann. How you doing? We have to send her a link to this. All right, boys. So there you go. There's an hour and 23 minutes. Anybody got something they'd like to add to anybody? I think we'll just go with final thoughts from everyone. So let's start with you, Bill. You got any final thoughts for people?
Sure. It's worth doing an SEO site audit because it gives you a chance to have somebody who has experience looking at lots of sites take a second look at your site. Part of our job is to keep up with the news, with new changes in the industry, and recognize them and see them when they take place. And we may see things that you didn't have time to keep up because you're too busy running the business. So we pay attention to what we see from the search engines and other SEOs who write about stuff. And we have lots of experience. We're a second opinion. That's the whole point of an SEO audit.
And I think we could double that up for the folks listening and watching and whatever that never have that finite audit process because, just like Bill's saying, mine is constantly changing. People say, oh, you're an audit guy. But no, every time a bit of news or Google makes a change or something else comes to light, I'm constantly improving and adapting that audit framework that I have. You know what I mean? So, for sure. Yeah. Kevin, final thoughts, sir?
I would say if you have the downtime or you have the ability to audit sites that you're not getting paid for, just to keep yourself sharp. Like,
oh God, Jesus!
No. I
have an Xbox for my downtime.
No. Hear me out. My point is that if you have a chance, if you want to ask us or anybody in the industry a question, instead of asking a specific one, it's a lot easier sometimes to be like, so I was looking at this site to see what was going on, and I found this. And it's the learning idea. Like, it's sort of like you can't go to the driving range to hit golf balls. So just as features come out, audit sites that you have access to or past sites.
No, I would say I agree with that. I would say competitor sites, because when things come out like the mobile page speed in July or this and that, I went to some of my clients' competitor sites and did a sort of a mini audit on them on my own time, like you're saying, just to see like where the differences were.
I don't mean spending that, but like you got to, like, case in point, if I don't have as many clients as I had before because I'm doing more full-time work, but I still look at stuff to keep my audit chops up to date, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like it. Terry, final thoughts, sir, from your toke?
Well, I'm still adding things. Now if there's certain things I see, I might go and look at Google Trends. And, up until then, I thought stuff like that was useless. But, you open your mind and you.
So, I essentially, I love that, because I've been enjoying this whole ride with you the last few months with SEM Rush and Trends and stuff. So what you're saying is old dog, new tricks, right?
Right.
Never close your mind off to new things.
Well, I just see now where I thought it only did this because that's all it was advertised to do. When I actually jumped into Google Trends and realized, hey, this is identifying audiences for me. I thought, oh my God. And, right away, I've got an up on all of my competitors because I looked at Google Trends and saw that what everybody is thinking is not actually true.
Right. So they're behind the bell curve and you're trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Always looking to be one step ahead. That, it's just like the law. You always want to be one.
And this is why Terry can't get in the States. He's trying. All right, Doc, last thoughts, brother?
Yeah, well, Kevin stole my thunder because that was exactly what I was.
All right, so we're done now.
doing a tech audit is a fantastic learning experience in terms of the nuts and bolts of how to do things, as well as understanding what can happen if they're not done right. But the only other thought I would offer is the fact Screaming Frog got a lot of mentions today. And I know that a tool that I have come to enjoy even more is SiteBulb.
Our buddy Dan Sharp, we know them before they started.
I love Screaming Frog, and if I'm doing a challenging site audit, I will usually run both SiteBulb and Screaming Frog and compare their notes, because generally one or the other will find something the other doesn't pick up on.
I can't second that enough. I didn't know about SiteBulb until about 6 months ago when Doc turned me onto it, and I would say, if I was going to pick something secondary to, like, because I never believe in one data source. If you got Majestic, go get AH.
At least two.
Compare notes. Don't trust any singular data source. So definitely SiteBulb, bro. Thank you for that. That was a really good call. I like that tool, and very few.
I love it. I like you can really dig deep in the data, and filters are very flexible.
Yep, agreed.
Not to diss Screaming Frog by any means. I mean, it's kept a lot of us eating for many years, and it's still a damn good tool. But it's always nice to have two perspectives.
So guys, girls, and everyone else, I think, be afraid of site audits. I think it's a learning experience. I think it's a great way to get to know your client when you start a new project. Lots of great things we had for it. Don't expect too much out of it. Sell it right. Follow it up right. You know what I mean? And it can only be a beneficial element of your ongoing SEO strategy if you carry that client forward. You know what I mean? Like, I think they're great.
Yeah. And what Kevin said about doing audits on your own time and not getting paid. You know what? When I started out, 90% of what I did, I wasn't getting paid for it. That's the best way to learn. Dig in. Don't read other people's stuff. Go and look at it yourself and learn it. That way, you're not dependent on other people. You're the fisherman.
Right. I was a member of Creative Site Forums, which is now sadly gone. But they had a website hospital, and people would bring their sites there all the time. And I'd pretty much do site audits on the sites.
There's some very instructional posts then. That's in that era when the hospital was going. That's when I was just starting to learn SEO, and I learned a lot reading on those.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna call it a day. That's an hour and a half, right on the nose. Again, thanks so much, guys. Like, you know, I really wish that we could sit here and dig through every part of a SEO audit, but I think a lot of the folks tuning in are more trying to understand on a business level. As an SEO, if you're in-house or if you're self-employed or whatever, they're just trying to understand where to put it in the mix and where to put it in the puzzle. And I think we did a half-decent job of that. So that's awesome. All right, till next time, from Search Geek Speak, Mr. Bill Slawski. Yeah. Kevin Doory?
Doory.
Yep. Doory. God fucking damn it. All right, anyways. Yeah. Don't do that, dude. That's right. I remember the meme now. That's right. Oh, the fucking fish. All right. Anyways, Terry Van Horn and of course Doc Sheldon. Thank you guys. Until next time. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Good afternoon.
Enjoyed it.
Depending where you live.
Thanks.